The world watched in awe as a small spark ignited a global revolution. When ChatGPT burst onto the scene in late 2022, it felt as though the very ground had shifted beneath the feet of every major technology executive. It was sleek, it was fast, and it was everywhere. For months, the headlines belonged entirely to OpenAI. They were portrayed as the agile David, the brilliant disruptors who had finally brought the legendary Goliath to its knees. Then came the moment the entire industry was waiting for, the response from the giant. But when Google unveiled its first attempt, known as Bard, the reality was far from a triumphant return. A single factual error in a promotional video caused the market value of the company to plummet by over $100 billion in a single day. The narrative was written almost instantly by the public and the press alike. Google was old, Google was slow, and Google was losing a race it had once dominated. But history often teaches us that the loudest noise in the room often comes from the smallest engines. While the world was mesmerized by the flashing lights and the viral magic of a new chat box, they may have missed a much larger forest fire burning deep within the shadows. It is easy to mistake a strategic pause for a terminal decline, and it is even easier to underestimate a giant that is simply finding its footing. While the spark of OpenAI captured our imagination, Google was quietly fueling a massive infrastructure that few can even comprehend. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. To understand why the giant seemed to stumble, we have to look at what is known as the innovator's dilemma. This is a psychological and economic trap that only the most successful companies face. Google's apparent paralysis was not caused by a lack of intelligence or research, but rather by the fact that they had everything to lose. When you are a small startup with nothing to your name, you have no reputation to protect. OpenAI could release an unfinished product and let the world find the bugs as they went along. But when you are a titan responsible for the daily digital lives of 3 billion people, a single mistake is not just a glitch, it is a catastrophe. Google was not just building a standalone tool for curious users to play with. They were responsible for the digital fabric of modern life, from the way we navigate our cities to the way we archive our professional histories. They were not looking for a viral moment of fame. They were preparing for a marathon that would last decades. The difference in strategy was clear from the beginning. OpenAI wanted you to go to a new destination to see what their technology could do. Google, however, was already planning how to weave that technology into the very air we breathe. They wanted to ensure that every time you sent an email, searched for a recipe, or looked for a location, their intelligence was there, guiding you without you even realizing it. A revolution often feels like a sudden explosion, violent and impossible to ignore. But a true technological upgrade feels more like gravity. It is invisible, it is silent, and yet it is completely inescapable. We are currently living through that transition. While the public continues to focus on the flashy demos and the social media trends, the real power is being consolidated in places the average person never sees. Deep beneath the surface of the earth and across the dark, cold floors of the world's oceans, something massive is stirring. While its competitors are forced to rent space in the digital cloud, often from the very companies they claim to be fighting, Google owns the land itself. They have spent the last 20 years building concrete fortresses and laying thousands of miles of fiber optic cables. This is the physical secret that makes the software of their rivals look like a temporary distraction. The real war is not being fought on our screens, but in the massive physical world that powers them. To understand why the giant is not just another player in the room, one must look deep inside their massive data centers. While many competitors scrambled to buy generic chips from third-party suppliers at premium prices, Google was methodically designing its own digital brain. They created the Tensor Processing Unit, or TPU. This was not just a minor improvement over existing technology. It was a custom-designed piece of hardware built for the singular purpose of processing the complex mathematics of artificial intelligence at a speed and scale that is almost impossible to comprehend. They have spent over a decade building this hardware head start. This matters because the physical cost of artificial intelligence is staggering. Every single time a user asks a question to a chatbot like ChatGPT, it consumes significant electricity and cooling that costs the provider real money. For a small startup, this can be a massive financial financial drain. But for the sleeping giant, the story is entirely different. They have optimized their entire global ecosystem to process billions of requests every day at a tiny fraction of the cost of their rivals. While others are essentially renting their digital existence from cloud providers, Google owns the actual land, the fiber optic cables under the ocean, and the very silicon chips that make the magic possible right here and right now. Infrastructure is invisible until it becomes indispensable. In early 2023, the world truly believed the giant had finally fallen asleep at the wheel. The headlines were brutal, and the stock price was shaking with every announcement from its rivals. But inside the glass walls of the headquarters, the atmosphere was one of intense calculation. Everyone thought Google was sleeping. They were not sleeping. They were building the cage. This period became known internally as the Code Red. The urgency was so great that the legendary founders returned to the war room to lead the charge. They were no longer there to simply give advice. They were there to fight for the future of their empire. This marked a fundamental shift in company culture. For many years, the organization had operated as a research institution. They were the ones who published the papers that the rest of the world used as a manual. They invented the transformer architecture, which is literally the T in GPT. They had handed the keys to the kingdom to the entire world, and for a short while, it seemed they had forgotten how to use those keys themselves. But the Code Red changed everything. The focus shifted from academic glory to product dominance. The giant was no longer sharing its secrets. It was deeply interested in winning the competitive war of the new era. The first true sign of this awakening was the rapid release of Gemini 1.5 Pro. This was not just another chat tool meant to compete with a viral chatbot. It was something much more profound. Gemini introduced a massive context window that effectively gave the artificial intelligence a memory that dwarfed every other model on the market. While others struggled to remember one document, Gemini was designed to digest entire libraries of books or thousands of lines of code in a single breath. This represents a strategic pivot from showing off what artificial intelligence can do to showing what it can actually accomplish in a professional environment. By moving away from providing blueprints for rivals to follow, they decided to keep the most powerful magic for their own users. This shift in strategy is why the tech industry is looking over its shoulder with renewed fear. The giant is no longer just talking about the future. It is shipping that future to billions of devices. Because this technology is plugged into tools 3 billion people already use every day, the barrier to entry has vanished. If Google now has the ultimate technology and the power of its massive global infrastructure, how does it change your life in the very near future specifically? The transition into the next era of technology will not happen through a website or a single viral application. Instead, it will be felt as a subtle, persistent ghost within the digital tools we use every single day. For the average person, the ultimate victory of the giant is not found in a grand announcement, but in the way their life becomes slightly more effortless without them ever even realizing it happened. This is the heart of the human impact. Artificial intelligence will no longer be a destination you visit. It will become a silent partner inside your Gmail, your docs, and your maps. For the first of our 3 profiles, the common user, this means the end of the prompt era. You will no longer need to figure out how to talk to a machine because the machine will already understand your intent. To the common user, the technology is not an invention. It is a convenience that feels as natural as breathing. For the second profile, the professional, the impact is even more profound. We are talking about an intelligence that has access to your entire 10-year work history because it is already stored within your secure workspace. When you ask it to summarize a meeting or draft a proposal, it does not provide a generic answer. It provides an answer that is uniquely yours, built upon a foundation of data that no competitor can ever access. This leads us to the third profile, the investor. In the high-stakes world of finance, the winner is rarely the one who has the most innovative idea in the laboratory. The winner is the one who controls the distribution. Google does not need to fight for your attention. Their moat is not just the code. It is the fact that 3 billion people are already using their ecosystem every hour. Who wins is rarely who invents. It is who scales. This brings us to a deep philosophical synthesis of where we are headed. We often judge dominance by headlines and social media trends, but history has a different way of keeping score. History judges the winners by their market share and their ability to become invisible. Google is not looking to be the topic of every dinner conversation. Their ultimate goal is for their technology to become as mundane and as essential as electricity or running water. We are moving rapidly from the era of artificial intelligence to the era of integrated intelligence. This is the transition from a piece of software to a piece of your identity. In this new world, the distinction between your own thoughts and the assistance provided by the machine begins to blur. It is no longer about a human using a tool. It is about a human operating within an intelligent environment. The story of the last 2 years was not a story of a giant failing, but a story of a giant recalibrating. Google did not lose the race. They were busy building a much bigger and more permanent track while everyone else was focused on the first lap. They understood that the loudest noise often comes from the smallest engines. And they were content to let the world talk while they laid the physical and digital foundations for the next 50 years of human history. They have spent decades preparing for this moment. It is a shift that turns a search engine into a prediction engine. As we conclude this journey, we have a question for you to consider. In this new world, do you value a tool that surprises you with its novelty? Or do you value a system that truly knows you and anticipates your every need? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and if you want to understand the next phase of this global power struggle, make sure to stay tuned. Next time, we will take a deep look at the one company that even the giant is afraid of. The loudest person in the room is rarely the most powerful. Remember that the next time you open a search bar,